This is Boomer Life Lessons and Stories, and I'm recording this on a Saturday evening. Normally I record them during the days on Saturday and sometimes Sunday afternoon. But the waning hours of the afternoon going into the evening after I watched some football and my team did win, yay. I thought it'd be good to record an episode on critical thinking and Waterloo. Now, if you're interested in hearing this story, just stay with me. But before we go there, I'd like to thank all my friends and subscribers for staying with me through these so many, I don't know, is it episode 22? I think it's episode 22. So many episodes. I mean, it's been a journey so far, and I've enjoyed it. I hope you have enjoyed it as well. I also hope that I've said something that has been of benefit to you, of interest to you, something that made you think a little harder, maybe a little more critically. That would be a success for me. I'll chalk that one up if that were the case. But since we've talked about and mentioned what the title of the episode is, let's go ahead and just kind of set the stage. Napoleon was getting ready for the final battle, of course, with Wellington. Everybody knew about where it was going to be. Prior to the battle being fought, Great Britain had had some trouble getting finances to fight Napoleon. Wellington was needing funds for his army, to supply his army. So they had had some failures, meaning the British government, in gaining access to some firms trying to drum up some funds for them to fight this big battle. But it had been pretty much a failure. So they had heard about Nathan Rothchild and his company, and they'd heard nothing but good things. They heard that his communications network and his courier network were both fast and reliable. Now that's going to become a very critical point in this story a little bit later. So they contacted him and set up an agreement where he would actually go and find the funds, the coins as it were called, and collect the coins and deliver them to the army so that they could provide whatever goods and services the army was going to need as they prepared to do battle with Napoleon. And this was no small task. I mean, Napoleon had described himself as emperor pretty much, conquering most of Europe. So if Wellington and his army failed, literally Napoleon would be emperor of all Europe. But let's talk about what really happened. So as the Rothschilds were running around trying to figure out what they needed to do to help supply the British army, Nathan realized through some critical thinking that whoever won the war, the individual that knew that first could gain an upper hand in the stock market. Now think about that. If you knew before anybody else knew how the outcome of a particular battle was going to come out, you might leverage that information in the stock market. Now, there might have been some questionable activities. There's some things recorded in history that we'll talk a little bit about, but there's some uncertainty as to whether it really occurred. One of the things, as an example, was that Nathan Rothschild was there at Waterloo when the battle occurred, and he ran when Wellington beat Napoleon. He rode his horse day and night and crossed the English Channel in the middle of the night to get the message back about who won the war. That's not so much supported by the facts of history. However, his courier service did play a big role in this. So as he's doing his critical thinking, he's thinking about how he might leverage this information to his and his firm's biggest advantage, right? So he decided that along the way from Waterloo to the Channel, and then from the Channel over into Great Britain, he would set up some comfort stations. Now, there's pros and cons. People still question that. Comfort stations perhaps were places for couriers, British soldier couriers, could stop and rest. And rumor has it he provided some other types of services that would have delayed the British couriers. He also had marksmen set out along the way, and anytime rumor has it, anytime that they saw a courier pigeon from the British Army flying off, they would typically try to shoot it down, right? So what they were looking at are delaying tactics, so that information of whoever won, whether Wellington won or Napoleon won, whoever won might be leveraged to the fullest extent for the benefit of the Rothschild family and their business concerns. So, of course, the day of the battle came, and as it were, Wellington won. And it was, I think, a little surprising that he had won, but he had done well with the British Army coming in from Spain and pushing Napoleon back. So with this, the carrier pigeons had been lofted up into the air. The British couriers from the British Army were sent on their horses back through France to the Channel. And along the way, they would stop, of course, and rest and partake, as the story goes, partake of the services being provided at these courier stations to refresh the couriers. Okay? That's all I'm going to say about it. And there was some rumor that should the couriers ignore these comfort stations, perhaps something more was done with the couriers. I don't think anything supports that in history, but you know, the story grows with the telling, I suppose. But be that as it may, as soon as the battle was over and the victor was declared, the Rothschilds sent their couriers along the path. Now remember, one of the reasons why the British government had selected the Rothschilds to actually collect funds to support their army was because of their vast communication network and the speed of their couriers. So the Rothschilds knew something about speed and getting the information reliably to its destination. So off their couriers went rapidly, day and night, until they got to the English Channel. Now, by the same token, again, remember, the British couriers are being delayed. The British are looking to get the message across the channel as soon as possible because everybody wants to celebrate, and everybody back in Great Britain, especially London, were holding their breath because they knew if Napoleon won, things were going to be drastically different, perhaps very badly so. So as it turned out, the Rothschilds got the message first back in London. So what do you think the Rothschilds immediately did? Think critically. Now see, I'm not advocating the methods that perhaps the Rothschild used with the other carriers. I'm not advocating that. I'm not advocating anything illegal. But what I'm suggesting to you, as far as your career is concerned, that you pay attention to the facts. You pay attention to the details. Remember, in a previous episode, I said there's 3 things you need to know about engineering, and there's 3 things you need to know about life. Details, 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 right? So details are very important, and the context is very important for the facts. So what do you think the Rothschilds did? Now, somebody might say, well, they probably sold all their French holdings, the French stock, and got rid of it before anybody else did. But if you thought that, you would be absolutely wrong. What do you think happened? They began early in the day to buy massive amounts of French stock. Now think about that. You're in the stock market, you have some large holdings of British stock, British company stock, and all of a sudden you see these up-and-comers, these Rothschilds, who are known for their speed and their communication network. You see them selling the British stock and buying massive amounts of French stock. What do you think all the other major firms that held stock were doing when they saw the Rothschilds doing that? Well, one of the things they probably were thinking is, oh my gosh, we lost the battle. The Rothschilds know they're selling the British stock and buying all that French stock, all the French company stock. We better sell our British stock as well. Now we're talking about, like stocks, part ownerships of companies, like today's stock market. So what do you think happens when everybody's selling the same thing? I'm just asking, right? What do you think happens when everybody's trying to flood the market and sell the same thing and get whatever they can out of it? The price has been driven down. The price has been driven down. What do you think is happening to the French stock? The price has been driven up. It's been driven up. So this goes on for quite a bit of the day. And just before the close of the market, the Rothschilds reverse themselves and sell all their French stock at a tidy sum and turn around and buy all the British stock they could afford to buy. Now, rumor has it, it's not substantiated with facts, that they made millions of pounds in the transaction. They became not rich, but they became filthy rich. So soon after that, the market basically is done. The Rothschilds are standing there holding massive amounts of British company stock from different firms and different companies. And the British courier arrives. And what's the message that the British courier is bringing? Wellington won. Oh my gosh. Wellington won. Great news. And then all the bankers and companies that sold their stock and bought French stock went, we're paupers. We've sold all our wealth for pennies and it's worth nothing. What do you think the Rothschilds did immediately after that? I'm just asking, right? They're filthy rich by the day's standard. They own massive amounts of companies from Great Britain and London, massive amounts of companies and stocks in those companies. What do you think they're afraid of? They were afraid of their own safety. And rumor, of course, has it, some indications, of course, they moved immediately to France. They wanted to escape the wrath of those that they had duped in that little transaction. Now, I'm not asking you to think critically so that you can perpetrate fraud or anything like that. And legitimately, perhaps, if they were to go to court, they might not be accused of fraud. They just might have had information that nobody else had, which was true. And they leveraged it to their family's benefit. And they've been a major financial powerhouse ever since. You think about that. Now, there is a law that's been passed in the United States. It's been passed, I don't know, I think since about the 80s, if memory serves me correctly. And I was in the stock market all the way up until about a year and a half ago. And so I know a little bit about stock. I actually had my stockbroker's license because I just wanted to understand what investment banking was like. And so I wanted to see how companies could be stood up and the initial public offering occur, and then the second public offering occur when stocks went out, were sold to the public. So it's really interesting to me because of my background, mostly engineering management, of course, and development of complex systems. But I was curious enough to know to go off and go to night school and get some understanding of that and actually getting the license. I didn't work as a stockbroker, but I did want that information, okay? So the Rothschilds leveraged information that they had, but nobody else had. If you're a company executive here in the United States, you're privy typically to the company's plans and strategy. That's proprietary information. And companies go to great extent to protect the company's proprietary information. But let's say that you know that the company had just lost a major contract and you owned a lot of the company stock. And that afternoon, you went and sold all your company stock into the market. You could be sent to jail for insider trading, because the stock market and the legal system will not allow you to do that using information that nobody else has, because you're in a privileged position. Now, if through analytics and observation from the outside, you determine that a company is in a bad way and pretty soon their stock may tank, and you make a decision to sell their stock, that's independent critical analysis, and that's okay. But the United States saw some of this in the market. And so they knew that it was not ethical, nor was it fair, because literally the statements were made that they were stealing from the previous stockholders. So they passed a law and prevented insider trading. People literally have actually gone to jail. And if an executive wants to sell some of the company stock that they own, they have to put it up, a notice up, that they're going to sell it on or after such and such date. And I believe that has to be 3 months. It could be a little longer than that. I'm not sure exactly of the timing, but it has to be long enough in the future that everybody is aware of it. And then they can use that information along with whatever else they can glean from the facts that the company publishes and the industry publishes about their products and services. So we're not talking about unethical behavior when I'm asking you, have you attempted to think critically of late? Have you identified opportunities for you and your company, or for you and your family, based on your critical thinking? Have you seen your Waterloo, so to speak? You see, I've said nothing about Wellington's strategy, and I've said nothing about Napoleon's strategy, and I've not talked about how the battle progressed back and forth. What I have talked about was somebody that realized they were in a unique position to take advantage of some information that they would have before anybody else had, and then using that information to increase their net well-being and their family's net well-being. Now, of course, today, and we do a lot of teaching and admonishing students at our great university, the University of Texas at Arlington, about connecting themselves to the highest standard of ethical behavior. So what I'm talking about is in your personal life and through legitimate means, looking at the landscape, identifying facts in context, and playing connect the dots. I also tell students about my wife and I going off to an art festival here in Fort Worth. And this was many, many, many years ago. And we were walking up to this one house, and it had one of those front porches where the rocking chairs sat on the front porch. But instead of rocking chairs on this particular day, since it was during the art festival, there were all sorts of paintings, and there was this massive, it looked to be about 4 by 5 feet photograph. And the photograph was of a woman in a beautiful dress. It was like a dress from the antebellum South, very beautifully done. She was walking in a garden, and the flowers were just beautiful. So somebody apparently had dressed up and had these photographs taken. So I walked up on the porch and I said, well, who was the photographer? I would just like to compliment them on how they took that photograph. And a gentleman stood up and said, oh, I'm the photographer, and that's not a photograph. I said, no, 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 no. That is a photograph. He goes, no. If you go look, I painted in color dots, in primary color dots. And if you go up really close, you're going to see all these primary color dots. And all you're going to see a couple of inches away from the canvas are all these dots. But when you back up, your brain kind of connects the dots for you, and all these colors merge in together, and they created that painting of this woman in a beautiful dress walking in the garden. So your brain connected the dots. The Rothschilds connected the dots. Have you connected the dots? Have you thought critically, longly, and deeply about something that you're thinking might be an opportunity or might be a good career move? Sometimes people have to take a lateral move in the company in order to move forward and advance their career. And that's a very hard thing to do because we know that people necessarily don't like change, right? They like to do what they know. So when you think longly and deeply and critically about some topic, what you're trying to do is understand the landscape, understand the context, and try to draw facts from that that might be of help to you in some manner, whether it's in your career, in your personal life, or whatever the case may be. And if you're able to consistently think critically, at some point, you're going to identify some opportunities. It might be career-wise in terms of career moves. It might be investment strategies. It might be, I don't know, something good in your hobbies. Whatever it is, it's going to be to your benefit and to your family's benefit. A little bit of thinking, time out, thinking long and deeply about life and facts and the landscape could yield some great benefits to you in the long run. So I suppose I'm at the end of this episode. I've always found this story to be striking. It was related to me in one of my graduate classes, and I was astounded at the brilliance, not necessarily in favor of some of the methodologies that they used in terms of the comfort stations. But be that as it is, if you think critically, you're going to make fewer mistakes, you're going to be less surprised, and you're going to identify opportunities. Wouldn't that be great? And with that, my friends, know this, you're always on my mind, and I do appreciate it. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share my content with others. That's the only way I'm going to grow this station, and I'll be able to continue sharing what little I know about life and my lessons learned. With that, all the best, and until the next episode, take care.